Today we're going to talk about the pros, concerns, and tips for hiring an outsourced accounting partner. And the main goal is taking a very candid look at how companies are evaluating this option.
Our outsourced accounting practice specializes in working with mid-market organizations to help finance functions run more effectively and efficiently. So here's our contact information, Mike and mine. If you do have questions or want to talk about any of this after the fact, feel free to reach out to either one of us, and we'd be happy to answer those questions.
To kick things off, it's really important to define this because it does range based on your needs. On the left end of the spectrum, there's your tactical bookkeeping services. On the right end, we have very strategic CFO advisory services. Outsourced accounting can be all of this or somewhere in between. No matter where your organizational needs lie on the spectrum, there are three things in common: helping organizations operate more efficiently, access to better data, and making smarter business decisions. The level of support and flexibility can change drastically. It's one of the major benefits of outsourcing. You can have the entire accounting function in an outsourced capacity. You could have a CFO controller in-house, and your outsourcing partner could make that CFO or controller shine. Give them a chance to operate on more strategic projects. Or maybe you're outsourcing the controller CFO portion and you have a team of staff level people. They just need a little more assistance and guidance, best practices, and growth opportunity. So you can really mix and mash up the outsourced accounting in a number of different ways. The tactical side is extremely important. Without the tactical side, you really can't get to a easy, efficient CFO advisory side. You can't make good business decisions if you don't have the base numbers. And you want to make sure that transactional foundation is fully squared away. And if that is being run efficiently, then the CFO and strategic side of the house will follow easily thereafter. So how can you double your revenue without doubling your headcount? This question comes into play throughout the webinar today, so we keep coming back to that concept. But imagine if you doubled in revenue through any means. What would your organization do? Would you be on the brink of turning down a contract or hiring employees based on a need, maybe an employee that doesn't fit the role, but it's a reactionary measure just to get that next contract in the door? We're going to talk about how outsourced accounting can help push revenue growth without the need to consistently add headcount.
All right, so we're going to stop right there and just ask a quick polling question, just to get a feel, that notion of doubling revenue without doubling headcount. From the folks in the audience, we want to know what might hold you back from doubling in revenue. And we're going to pop up the first poll here. All right, and we'll just give everyone a few quick seconds to respond to that one before we keep going. All right, looks like responses are still coming in, so let's just give that a couple more seconds. All right, perfect. So it looks like we're across the board there. We had a selection in every one of the options. So Sarah will kind of walk us through, where do you go from here? But I think the biggest takeaway is that in terms of doubling revenue without doubling headcount, the challenges and the opportunities are really not unique for any organization. Everyone kind of is in the same spot. So let's talk about how we help you kind of get over that hump and be prepared for a situation like this.
Thanks, Colin. So I think the scenarios that Mike ran us through about doubling revenue and doubling headcount, it's important to keep in mind the element of time here. So if you're going to double over 10 years, that's scalable, that's manageable. Where outsourcing can really be helpful is if you're also constrained by time here, if these things are happening quickly. So what's interesting about outsourcing and where we think this comes into play is the flexibility that it can give you. Designed and scoped effectively, outsourcing can be the most efficient way to manage your accounting function, particularly when your business is in flux. However, if you don't have everyone aligned from the start, the very flexibility that's the benefit can also be the failure trigger. So you want to align with a good partner, a good outsourced accounting partner who's going to work with you up front to design a relationship that fits your current needs, but can also be flexible as your company's changing, so you don't box yourself in. Some questions you're going to want to answer with your partner before you move forward in an engagement is things like an hourly or a retainer model, an on-site or remote setup. Do you want bookkeeper, controller, or CFO level services, or some combination of the three? What's the communication strategy and plan? These are all questions and considerations these are the table stakes. These have to be managed for any good relationship to function well. And you want to make sure you're addressing these at the upfront. So we're going to touch on these as we move throughout the presentation, but keep those questions in mind. So we're also seeing more and more people are asking this question, and we started to think internally, why is outsourced accounting all of a sudden such a viable and relevant option for so many businesses? We believe there's two key forces at play right now that make this a more attractive option than ever. The first is a tightening labor market, and the second is a greater accessibility to good technology. So on the first piece of this, everyone knows we're at record low unemployment right now. The pain of this is compounded if you're in a company that's changing quickly. Many of the organizations that we interact with are faced with this risk of hire Goldilocks scenario. So you have to think, when your organization is growing and changing, do we overpay for a higher level person right now while cash is really tight that we're going to grow into? Or do we underpay someone and outgrow them quickly? It's kind of a no-win situation. It is that Goldilocks scenario. There's no just right situation. And outsourcing can give you the flexibility to navigate around that. The other piece of this is the technology. So cloud has been around for a long time. The difference is it's getting better and better and more accessible to organizations of all sizes at cost-effective numbers. So the barriers to entry for a good, effective outsourcing relationship, like data lag, accessibility to data, communication tools, they're gone. They're not barriers to entry anymore because of the technology and the innovations in the cloud. So if you are thinking about this right now, is it a suitable option for your organization to consider? It's not the right solution for everyone, but when it does make sense to consider outsourcing, there are a few common scenarios that we see specifically. The first, if you're looking for help to achieve specific business goals. For example, we've talked about growing quickly, raising capital, needing a level of expertise that you don't currently have in-house. The other scenario we see quite often is when folks are looking to right-size the accounting function in the face of change. We deal with a lot of scenarios where companies are dealing with retirement of a controller or a CFO. And that retirement of current staff gives you the opportunity to evaluate current needs and your current accounting structure, your department structure. Managing growth, we've talked through as the organization grows revenue and sales. Business realignment is another big one. So if you are expanding geographies, looking at new products and services, a merger, a divestiture, all these scenarios, what they all have in common is they give you a chance to evaluate your needs and structure your accounting department to meet those current needs, but also put a structure in place that's going to be scalable to meet your future needs as well. So bottom line, it's a good time to think about outsourcing. It's a suitable solution for you to consider if, one, you are thinking about how to automate and streamline your business processes, and you're thinking about how to scale your finance and accounting staff. You don't want to think about it if you're in a scramble situation.
And then, fortunately, that's a lot of times when we're introduced to a prospect. Their back's up against the wall and they're fighting. They either have an opportunity or a hurdle that they have to jump over, and they're going to need to make a hurried decision one way or the other. Sometimes that could be in a capital raise situation, or they do land that new contract or some massive pivoting in the company. But where are you right now? If you're not on fire, then right now would be an opportune time to think strategically in case your hair is on fire in a month or 6 months or a year down the road. So that proactiveness is great. Some recent examples of a prospect that was introduced to us, they had their only accounting staff put 1 week's notice in, and they were leaving. This person had all the institutional knowledge. They were the person that knew how to run payroll, to get the invoicing out, to get the bills paid, and they were literally looking to have someone come in. This was a Thursday conversation, Friday, and just shadow this person and try to get as much information as possible over the next 6 business days, because it would have been very difficult once this person moved cross country on the drop of a dime to have that relationship and that information. On the flip side, in an outsourcing situation where we were doing mostly transactional level work, a large fundraising opportunity came to table, and the owners of the company had some experience raising capital, but this was the largest raise that they were going to have. And the company that was going to put the money into the investment in, they hired a national accounting firm to come in and do due diligence over their entire financial process and financial numbers. So it was a great situation where we just had to start working a little bit more for them. We had the expertise. Hopefully your accounting partner would have that expertise as well. But being able to handle that level of a due diligence is not something that every transactional or bookkeeper level person has. You're not going to have a CFO sitting on the sideline all the time if you have a full-time staff in-house. So it's just one example of where outsourced accounting can easily ramp up to meet a demand that you didn't see on the horizon. So Sarah hit on the cloud and the technology that's been advanced in the market. So we've set the stage for outsourced accounting and what outsourced accounting is to us. And I want to continue to talk about why it can be so successful. And one of the keys is the power of technology. Availability and automation. Sarah hit on the golden age of outsourced accounting thanks to the cloud. Historically, a lot of organizations would tap into a third-party hosted server if they were in an outsourced situation. It was painful. It was almost like going back to AOL dial-up. It just, to get to your information was not easy. So what did you do often is you didn't look at the information until it was outdated. With the increased capabilities in the cloud, this is no longer the case. A good outsourcing partner, they'll push you to the cloud. They'll push you into availability and automation of your data. If we go back to the 2 times revenue without 2 times the headcount example, if you want your business to grow without exploding your full-time employees, focusing on efficiency and automation is going to be essential. A good outsourcing partner will work with you to sync all of your systems with the goal of creating one single source of truth. You do this pushing data, whether it's payroll data into your accounting system, or if it's your online revenue, having that automatically post and update your dashboards that you can go in on any browser and look at and consume that data. Key points in making an efficient process that will be able to scale with you. I want to talk about an example of a company that is being strategic in their process of growth. They have a small customer base. Their accounting folks are tapped out from the staff accountant to the CFO, and they really want to double their customer base. Again, they have a small customer base. They have a few large customers. So adding 1 or 2 more customers would change dramatically the profitability of the company. But they're bogged down in manual processes. So to get one invoice out the door is a week-long project because they're chasing around receipts. They're pasting them with tape onto a piece of paper. They're getting sign-offs throughout the office. People are in and out. So you can just imagine that it's not an ideal situation. So with the addition of technology, putting the expense report system into the cloud, having all of that data pull and sync automatically onto the invoice, and then being able to print a PDF of all of the receipts that they need to pass through on that invoice with a click of a button is going to dramatically save them time. And in return, they'll have a system that will be set up with the same amount of people to do twice the amount of revenue.
So Mike alluded to this just a minute ago, the idea of automation and a good outsourced accounting partner is going to help you think about this and help you move in this direction. But true cloud is something that's still sort of a foreign concept to some people. So let's take a minute and think about what it is and really define it. The first thing is what it's not. So true cloud is not elements on an on-premise server, either in your office or at your accountant's office, that's being, quote, pushed up to the cloud. You want to identify solutions that truly are built for automation, built for efficiency, and built for scalability. So a few key items that you want, or features of the true cloud that you want to look for are open APIs. These are links. It's the ability to link other business systems you use to your accounting system. This eliminates the need for manual data entry and imports, the process Mike was just talking about with the invoicing. If you can sync all of these systems together, you avoid the fat fingering, the manual data entry that leads to errors, and is frankly just a redundant, drawn out process. There's a couple elements, other elements listed here, automatic backups, automatic updates, the data security. These are all things that come with the true cloud difference. You want to identify an advisor that has not just the accounting background, but who also has this experience with the technology, who can help advise you through this and help work with you to identify the right solution for the future of your business. So one thing here that I think is really important to emphasize, and why we like the true cloud, is the the improvements to reporting. So we talk about the difference of reporting and business intelligence. If you have access to real-time data, access to auto imports, you've minimized your manual entry errors, think about how much time your employees are going to save from pulling manual reports that once they pull them, they're already outdated. Think about the power of real-time data, real-time business analytics in your business, and then you understand the difference between reporting and business intelligence. The other thing to think about is how confident are you that everyone in your organization is looking at the same data? If everyone's pulling their own spreadsheets together, we've all been in that scenario before. So some points here to think about: the value of a real-time dashboard where you know the state of your business, you have all the access in one place. The old mantra, if you're going to fail, fail fast. Being able to track real-time data in an easy to digest dashboard empowers decision making. You reduce risk. We've talked about the out-of-date spreadsheets, human error, and fat fingering. And then stakeholder reports. This is something that I know Mike and I talk to prospects and clients about all the time. The amount of time they are spending pulling reports together for stakeholders, whether it be board members or investors, executive teams. These reports oftentimes are ad hoc, requested at the last minute. You spend a lot of time developing these reports, and by the time they're created, oftentimes they are out of date. You worry about accuracy, and they're pretty useless for decision making since they're already out of date. So the true cloud difference can empower this business intelligence versus reporting, which I think is where business is going right now.
All right, so we have our second polling question here, and we're going to launch this for you guys. What we are curious about is how many hours per week are you spending, you or your team spending preparing reports, not analysis, just data collection. So let's launch that poll and give everyone a chance to weigh in. There we go. All right, let's just give everyone a chance to weigh in here. All right, so either we skewed this very low or everyone's kind of in the same boat in terms of reporting is taking a while. We're looking at everyone actually responded 5+ hours, with the exception of actually it looks like a couple of new ones just came in giving the 1 to 5 hours. So it looks like the bulk of you are over 5 hours a week on reporting. So I think that this is an area that, in terms of what Sarah's saying about really simplifying and streamlining this, a lot of folks could use some guidance and some help. So, all right, we'll get out of there and jump right back into things.
Okay, so we've talked about the technology. We've talked about the definition of outsourced accounting. So Mike and I wanted to have a pretty candid conversation at this point about outsourcing your accounting function. Obviously, we're believers in this. We think it's a great option for a lot of businesses in a lot of scenarios. It can be a huge asset. But let's look at some of the pros, some of the concerns, and some of the things that you really need to look out for if you are considering this for your business. When we think about pros, we're just going to make the assumption here that you're picking a good partner. A lot of these things are going to be irrelevant if you don't. So hopefully you're pulling some information from here today that's going to help you do that. First thing to think about is, we'll refer back to that Goldilocks scenario. Don't pay a CFO level person to do bookkeeper or transactional level work. And don't expect a bookkeeper to provide CFO level strategic services. You want to find a good partner that can provide the right level of resources when you need it, but can also scale up and down. The example Mike talked about with our client who was raising some money and needed some immediate CFO type support, we were able to pull that out for them and support that area for them when they needed it.
Yeah, that's 100% right. In a outsourcing partner, you often have the ability to find someone who's technology focused. It's a huge value add. A bookkeeper, their job isn't to go out necessarily and find the best technology in the marketplace, but in an outsourcing environment, it is key for a successful partner to have the best practices in place. Otherwise, they can't scale their own business. So you're basically able to get a great amount of technical expertise, technology expertise, which is key to our mantra of doubling your revenue. A quick example, if your AP bills go from 150 a month to 500 a month, but you're using a software that can scan and put that data into your system for you ahead of time, you don't need to hire another AP clerk. You're relying on technology. So using a partner that has that level of expertise in the technology which is out there is a great pro.
The only other point I'll make here quickly is the single point of failure. So this is something we hear all the time. It's a huge business risk. And we've alluded to this in earlier slides as well, but I think this is important for everyone to think about is, can you calculate what it would cost you if your only accounting clerk got up and resigned with a week's notice? It's a huge risk to your business. The institutional knowledge lost can be devastating. So a pro of outsourcing is it mitigates that risk. You have a team of support behind you who can provide continuity. So there are concerns. People have questions, and we try to answer them as best we can. When it is a great fit, there are still valid questions and concerns. So some of the ones we hear most often, data security. People are concerned about, business owners are concerned about people outside their organization accessing their data, and also the security of the data moving back and forth between you and your outsourced accounting partner. Regarding the first part of this, people outside your organization accessing your financial data, I mean, you got to kind of weigh this out. Would you rather have a highly qualified person outside your organization managing your financial data, or an underqualified person inside your organization? The risk is pretty much the same. It's still people. So I can't brush that one aside, but I think it mitigates itself. In terms of the security of the data, we touched on this when we talked about True Cloud. So when you're using True Cloud solutions, the data security, the backup, the automatic updates, that's part of the technology solution. That's much more secure than an on-premise solution that can be hacked. And that this is something that cyber experts can talk through, but the technology is going to address a lot of these data security issues for you.
From a communication standpoint, it is a big change to not have that person down the hall that you can just drop in and throw a question to. But with an outsourcing partner, technology, as we've hit on, often has built-in communication platforms that really streamline how questions are asked and answered. A lot of the work that was traditionally managed by the person down the hall will be automated and pushed to your phone for review. So a lot of the normal communication you hope goes down because of the processes that are in place. The key here is expectation setting, designing and sticking to a communication plan, having built out workflows and responsibilities, making sure that you leverage your outsourced partner, not as a vendor, but as a true member of your team. For them, they should look at it as if they're just an extension of the team and an employee of your company. It just happens to be that they're not on your payroll. But leaning on them for elements that would be missing from an in-house accountant, such as best practices, that is a key pro to pushing towards an outsourced accounting relationship.
So along the same lines, missing the person down the hall, specifically relevant to the scenario where you've got an outsourced CFO or controller managing a staff of accounting people, is the staff development and management. And this is something that we've wrestled with clients, and every scenario is different. But if you don't have a person in-house, management teams are concerned. How are we developing our staff? How are we managing? How are we overseeing the day-to-day? I think here, and Mike, I certainly would like you to weigh in on this a little bit because you play this role of CFO or controller for a lot of our clients. But the key here is the senior management buy-in and the relationship between the senior management and, Mike, you and your team to hold people accountable to processes.
There's an easy answer for me to say, how am I going to develop staff if the client has a very solid bookkeeper and they want to utilize them? How do we make sure that they're still progressing? And one of the key sources for us to develop staff comes from reviewing their work, providing feedback real time, making sure that we're treating them just as we would treat a staff in our own in-house team. And when you look at that, and often your accounting partner has built-in CPE plans for their staff, so you have the ability to take your staff and supplement them into even a better training regimen. So there's a clear path to making sure that staff have a career growth in an outsourcing situation.
The last piece of this is the learning curve. So everyone's business is unique. Everyone's business is different. So you want to identify a partner who can commit to an onboarding timeline and plan. You want to agree on a roadmap for execution. We talked about the importance of communication and the other things that we did address on this slide, the staff development management, the data security, whatever concerns you have. This is all part of that learning curve element. You want to talk through all of this because every scenario is custom. Every business is unique. So you want to really talk through that and address these concerns with the partner. A lot of times it can be designed to suit your needs.
And if you take a step back and think about hiring in-house, these are the same questions that you would have. You read someone's resume, you don't know how embellished it is or isn't. They're going to have a learning curve. They're going to have to develop. If you look to an outsourcing partner, you can pretty quickly tell if they've been successful at it. You can check their references. It's what they do day in, day out. So it does probably take that risk, that higher risk, and notch it down because you're siding with a proven partner already.
All right, so we have our last polling question here. We're going to keep this one a little open-ended, and we'd ask that you submit your answer in the question box here so that we could answer any of them before the end of today. But what else is anyone concerned about? What's top of mind for you? We've talked about a lot today, everything from defining what outsourced is, what it isn't, and really getting into the technology and the mechanics of how that relationship works. But what else are you concerned about? So we will open this one up, and please respond in the questions and let us know what you guys think. We put a few options in here for you, but if any specific questions, please submit those in the questions tab. All right, cool. So we got a lot of feedback here. A couple good questions too. There's one here that we want to tackle. All right, so Mike and Sarah, this person is wondering, in the past when we've considered bringing in outsourced, folks on the team have been worried about, like, how are you messaging or how are you positioning, their tenure and their capability as far as like their future at the organization. It raises some flags, it raises some alarms. Like, how do we approach that at SC&H when we come on board and folks are worried, are we going to lose our job? How do you guys handle that?
Why don't you take that, Mike?
Sure. It's definitely a question. A lot of business owners are very loyal and they treat their staff like family. So in some situations, it's not an issue because someone's leaving the organization. But in other situations, maybe we're coming in above that staff accountant or below that controller, and they have a fear because this outsourcing partner does both that transactional work and that controller work, which to say they're not going to consume my job in the future. And the answer to that is generally, if it's a really good employee, then there's a home for them on the team. And by working with someone who has that level of expertise, it's only going to rise their game. Whether it's a staff accountant that becomes more analytical because we've implemented technology, and now instead of just paying bills, they're able to negotiate discounts for vendors. Real quick value add, that makes that person shine. Or if maybe it's the other way and we're coming in to do the transactional work, that controller or CFO now has great data that they'll be able to spend time analyzing versus spending that 5 hours a week collecting it. So, it's a team effort, and that's the way that a great partner will come at it is we're here to supplement you where you need help most. And, a good employee is a good employee, and just the ability to make them do their job better should come from outsourcing.
Good answer.
Thanks.
So what we want to talk about here, these gotchas, these really, I think, are actually more like ways to mitigate the concerns from the prior slide. Questions you should be asking, priorities that you should have on your list when you're interviewing and researching possible partners. The first one to touch on is the fee structure. So we talked about this at the very, very beginning. We've seen a couple different models, 3 different models out there: hourly, fixed fee, and project. Fixed fee forces everyone up front to agree on expectations. And frankly, it can improve the success of a relationship because it encourages open communication. So what we've experienced, and if you set this up right and everyone agrees, any one of these can work. But with that open communication, we've seen an hourly billing model be a problem because it forces our clients, or clients in general, to second guess leaning on the outsourced partner. To say you're afraid to pick up the phone and make a phone call because you don't want the billable hours to kick in. And when you start going rogue and operating on your own and not leaning on your partner, that's when bad decisions get made. So that's why the fee structure is important to talk about and understand the pros and cons of both.
From a resource standpoint, it's great to have that single point of contact. There's typically a team environment in an outsourced model, not always, but often. So if you have that single point of contact, it will alleviate a lot of communication issues, knowing that Sarah is my go-to person, and once we agree on what needs to get done, that she's ultimately responsible for that deliverable. Additionally, access to data. We did talk about some of the older outsourcing models that would host a accounting file online. It was very difficult to get to. In today's environment, there's really no good reason why you shouldn't be able to get to your data through any web browser.
You also want to watch out for proprietary software and data systems. Those can catch you.
Yeah, we've seen that where someone in 25 years ago custom designed a solution for maybe a specific industry, and the upkeep for them to keep that system active is huge. So there's a major risk of that system going away.
And once you put your data in it, you're kind of stuck.
Exactly.
I think the other element of this, Mike, was the just general access to technology. So the data access is important, but you want to make sure you identify a partner that is really focusing on the automation element. This is the key to make it work. So you want someone that's familiar with what's out there in the market, what the best practice solutions are, and help you identify the right platforms. You want them to help you vet these solutions.
It's an overriding theme for me is technology first to automate as many processes as possible. We've said that transactional accuracy is super important. It's key to getting that data that you can then make some strategic decisions on. However, what's the true value of someone hand typing in 100 invoices into your payable system? It's not great. So if you can get that same accuracy in a technology, then you can redeploy that person's time for something that adds more strategic value.
Along those lines, just not to jump too far ahead, but the last bullet on this slide ties in with that. You got to have executive buy-in to support these automated processes. If you don't have that communication, that support between your outsourced accounting partner and the leadership of the company, things can fall apart. You don't want your outsourced CFO or controller chasing down expense reports. That's just not an effective way to run a relationship. So the executive buy-in to support the internal processes that everyone agrees to is going to make things run much more smoothly. It's also going to eliminate some of the scope creep that we've experienced and seen in some negative situations that we've rescued. So the minimal upfront scoping can eliminate that as well, or mitigate that. But you do run into that for someone that's not spending a lot of time upfront doing planning, agreeing on expectations. You're going to run into scope creep, and that's where you run into unexpected bills, and that's an unhappy situation.
Just touching back on the technology for a quick second, there was a question that came in just asking, what do you do when one of your vendors is consistently sending in paper invoices, they haven't gone digital? And what we typically would do is have in a scanner, have a preset email address where you just throw those invoices in there. You can throw in 50 at a time or one at a time, it doesn't matter, and then you scan it to our accounts payable email address, and then from there, it's pretty easily handled. And now we've just basically taken that paper and made it digital. Going paperless is a huge time saver when you're going back trying to find data. It's tremendous when you're looking for that invoice from 5 months ago and you can just go right to a transaction and click on it. It's a big time saver. So once you've decided to move forward with an outsourced accounting partner, here's some tips on how to set up that relationship to make it successful. We've outlined 3 ingredients, starting with discovery, communication plan, and great workflows. So in the discovery phase, it is taking the learning curve and crunching it down to a short time period so that we're not necessarily learning on the job over months. In this discovery phase, we often try to figure out everything that is going on as it stands, and then, okay, what's that look like in a best practice scenario? How can we pull out all these inefficiencies? How can we take what is being done in Excel and build that out in the system so that it's an automatically generated report at the end of each month? So, getting all of those deliverables defined up front and figuring out what those workflows are, getting everyone on the same page is going to roll right into the next key, which is communication.
Let me jump in real quick here and just make one other point. The discovery phase is so essential, but it's hard to do it right if you're in a hair on fire scenario. So but it can be done, I think. And we've experienced this where we have had clients come to us in an emergency situation where they needed stopgap support. We're able to jump in, but we always make sure we take the time to go back and work through this, to set the expectations up, build in the processes, and align ourselves correctly. So just make sure you do this at some point in the engagement. Sooner is better.
All right, structured communication. What does that mean, generally speaking? There's clearly not a one-size-fits-all answer. Some people are naturally want to pick up the phone and have that conversation. Other people will hit the deny button and let you send them an email afterwards. So just understanding what someone's preferences at the onset will help you figure out what is that best communication plan. There are tons of tools out there that'll give you a huge leg up. Some things that have worked really well for us is having a predefined, agreed to reporting calendar so that everyone is on the same page on when, expense reports will be done, AP bills process, AR invoices out the door, so on and so forth. Often having a standing meeting at some time. Is that weekly, monthly? Is it 2 times a week to start, and then it is expected that after a month, maybe that tails off to 1 time a week? Using tools like Slack, Microsoft Teams. Many of our clients use those tools, so we're happy to jump in and utilize that type of communication. But the key really comes back to having that open conversation up front. What way do you typically communicate in your organization? And then having the capability to be flexible enough that that you can plug into what makes the most sense. And the last key that we want to talk about, the last tip here, is structured workflows. So who's doing what are the responsibilities? Just like any organization where you hire someone and you give them a list of things that they do, it's the same process, only I find it's often more thought out. And when you think about the process and who's doing what, you're going to want to build in as much efficiency as possible. So having the top-down support from management, because often there will be some change management that needs to happen. There'll be training, whether that's maybe an expense reporting tool or training because the AP clerk is going to learn a new cloud-based software. Having that top-down buy-in is key. And what we often see is teams are excited about the change because there has been a broken process and they don't know the answer. They don't understand how to fix it. So by going in and giving them great tools to do their job more efficiently, we often see a huge positive response.
Okay, so we've run through the definition of outsourced accounting. We've talked about technology, why people are looking at this option and when you should be looking at this option, and some ways to set yourself up for success. I think if you are considering outsourcing, if any of these scenarios sounded familiar that we ran through today, and judging from the answers in the polling questions, some of them definitely did, it's worth considering and it's worth taking a close look at this. So just a few key points in summary. You want to leverage automation from cloud technology and the services of an outsourced accountant to get a greater bang for your buck. You're going to get increased services, increased expertise, get your time back in your day, and get access to better data. This is a huge pro of outsourced accounting and the technology element. So if you're looking for any of those 4 things or any combination of them, it's worth considering and talking to a couple trusted partners out there to find the right fit for you. Thank you all so much for joining us. Our contact information is on this page. If we can be of help, answer any questions. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.